2026 meeting. This meeting is called to order real fast. I just wanted to do a quick little grounding for everybody. At the previous board meeting, which was on February 25th, the board unanimously voted to have the entire meeting be on governance tonight. And so in support of that decision and the discussion you're about to have, I just want to remind folks that I sent out some emails to you about governance topics to get the brainstorming rolling and encouraged folks to do some research. There was also a few inquiries I received from board members about my staff report. So I sent that out to you on an email earlier today. And I also published it on the events page on the website. I was not planning to give that talk verbally since you all had decided your agenda item to be governance. I'm excited and hopeful with this conversations that you're about to have this evening, and I'm looking forward to supporting you any way I can. And let me know what's most helpful for you. Given that there's, multiple voices, having a vote for direction would be really helpful. I have new voting sheet records, so I'll be doing the voting roll call differently this meeting. You all can give me feedback on how you would like that to change going forward. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. I also wanted to let folks know in the room and from the board that we are under a flood watch at the moment. I've got a map up that I'm going to periodically check. Everything looks fine now, but if for some reason we need to recess this and adjourn, or not adjourn, but reconvene online, we can make that decision. So I turn it over to you all to handle your agenda item. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to make a motion. I think one of our challenges in the last meeting was the lack of procedure for the meeting itself. And what I move is that we adopt Robert's rules for this meeting, and that you, Kristen, be our guide, facilitator, whatever that phrase is. I'm not saying this has to be the model for the future, although I probably favor it, but in all honesty, but just for this meeting so that we can, get everyone's voice heard.
Is there a second?
To the extent it's required, seconded.
Can I say before we vote, so Dina and I worked together in the last couple of weeks to put together a draft agenda for today to help us kind of move forward. And draft bylaws that are based totally on the PAC bylaws plus our own code, for the board. Can we take a look at this draft, perhaps, before we start voting on things?
So if we're sticking to Robert's rules, then there's a motion and a second. So that'll need to be discussed and voted on before something else can be brought forward.
Great. Okay.
That is, you're discussing
Okay,
now.
great.
So if there's anybody else who'd like to discuss, we'll kind of go back to the first meeting and just temporarily raise hands. I'll try and get everybody in order and call on people, and then unless you guys vote on something else. So Madeline, you can finish, then Tita. Anybody else want to get in line to discuss? I don't see anybody else in the room. Yeah, sorry, Sarah?
Great.
Okay. Madeline, Tita, and then Sarah, please.
Wonderful. Thank you. I would like to discuss the possibility of using the democratic rules of order, and that is included in the agenda that we put together. And obviously there is space to discuss other potential ways of working together. We just would like to do that a little later in the agenda once we approve an agenda of what we're going to do together today.
Tita?
So my understanding is that Robert's rules and the democratic style are on the table, but I believe Robert's rules may require us, even for just one meeting, to select a chair. And then for the democratic style, is that going to require a chair?
So right now, the motion is to adopt Robert's rules temporarily for this meeting and have me be the facilitator. So that's what we're currently discussing right
Great,
now.
thank you.
Sarah?
I'm a little bit confused. So you've been working with someone to come up with an agenda, and you guys created a set of possible rules based off of what the PAC had done. Is that correct?
Yeah, especially because we don't have subcommittees right now. We did meet just to discuss, we met with stakeholders, including folks who were on the PAC, Cop Watch, people from CRC, to come up with things that were based off the PAC transition plan, as well as the PAC bylaws. And based off of that, we created something that kind of combines that with the code of CBPA to create kind of a blueprint. And in fact, I also invited Councillor Canal to come possibly speak about what the PAC was like, since he ran the PAC, and how that could work.
I was under the impression that we weren't supposed to have meetings outside of this to come up with stuff.
We're allowed to meet as long as we aren't at quorum. Currently, quorum is 11 people.
I mean, I also wasn't aware that we were allowed to create agenda stuff necessarily. I'm just trying to clarify stuff so I understand for the future.
Yeah, we are, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're allowed to do work in between meetings as long as we don't meet quorum or otherwise break public meetings laws.
All right, I think I'm going to have another question soon, but I'd like to see what we're doing before I do that.
Great, and I'd love for us to work together in between meetings, if you're into that.
Justice, and then Tim, please.
Quickly, so this is why the rules are important, and we're kind of getting off track. The motion on the floor right now is the Robert Rules of Order, and whether or not we're going to be using those for this meeting already, and having Kristen be our facilitator at this particular basis. And so I think our discussion should focus on that. The agenda and other things we can talk about a little bit later, but if we could focus our conversation on that, I'm fine using the Robert's Rules of Order or any other rule related to that, but I think we just need to get that established so we're not arguing, we're not having disagreement or discussion to have disagreements or discussions to figure out to get to the rules. I think that's just kind of not productive and not getting us to where we need to go.
Okay, Tim, and then Madeline.
Along the same lines, I don't see Heidi here today, and that seems like more of a question for her about what we can and can't do outside or in meetings. But I agree. Oh, perfect. Well, we could ask her that question later. I think what we're trying to accomplish and what the original motion was for is just to kind of have an order of operations to get through today, to get to where we're going to be, not so much we're adopting this for right now. So I agree with Justice. We should probably just settle how we're going to facilitate today.
And then because my Robert's Rules is a little rusty, I think I have to see if there's any first-time commenters before I going back to a second commenter. That could be wrong. I apologize. But is there any other first-time commenters before we go back to Madeline? I don't see any online people commenting. So, okay, seeing none, Madeline, please.
I'd be interested to know how many of us have read Robert's Rules and are familiar with all of the details of that.
I wouldn't say all.
Who's familiar enough with the details of Robert's Rules to know if we're following them and to confidently vote to use them today?
Okay, there was some hands raised.
That's my question. I'm done.
Could we just maybe go over the basics before we vote?
Yep. That's, 1 second.
I can give it an initial shot.
Okay, I was just bringing up something to make sure I, but go for it, Trish.
I am not looking forward to, four-part harmony and, this and that and the other thing. But as was reflected in the report, the Co-Intelligence Institute report, which distinguished between Robert's rules, dynamic facilitation, and consensus process. It's essentially a way to inject order. It's majority rule. Basically, a motion is made. There's a second. Of course, if there's not a second, it doesn't go anywhere. And then there's discussion on that particular motion. There can be amendments, and then there'd be discussion on the amendments and a vote on the amendment. Again, if there's no second, it would not go forward. And a majority would vote and would decide to either accept or reject the amendment. And that's pretty much what I'm talking about here. I'm just trying to get some level of order so we can, I really want to hear this. This is the first I've heard of this. I wish it had been shared with us before, and so we're not in this topsy-turvy situation again. But I understand we all have other things to do. And that's why my motion is, just about this meeting tonight. Hopefully I've given an adequate description of Robert's rules.
Corinne and then Atticus.
I would like to make a comment that if we do subcommittee work, we should establish subcommittees. It should have been brought up. And that we can actually follow some form of procedure that establishes a little bit of rigor.
And just a reminder, the motion is about using a Robert's Rules of Orders just for this meeting tonight and have me facilitate for just tonight. Atticus?
Yeah, I just want to know how Robert's Rules of Order differ from the Democratic Rules of Order, or are they very similar? It's okay if you don't know as well.
If you're referring to the new proposal, I don't know.
I'm referring to your proposal, to your motion.
How it refers to the Democratic proposal?
I want to know the difference because I'm ignorant on the full scope of both. So I just want to know the main differences between those two styles.
I don't know what is referred to, in the reference to a democratic process. Clearly, these words have a tendency to, become words of art and mean certain things. I would certainly not say Robert's Rules is undemocratic. Everyone has the right to speak to the motion, to, vote for or against its majority. I'm not familiar with the democratic model that, has been suggested. I look forward to hearing about it. Again, this is just, we're all kind of vaguely familiar with Robert's Rules, and Kristen's been doing such an excellent job at facilitating. That's why I move forward. Does that respond to your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Tisha, and then I do have a quick update on what the difference is, if that's helpful, but Tisha, please go.
As I'm looking at the difference, the only thing I see is the chair. We don't have a chair. That's the only difference that I see in what I'm reading.
The chair is not for Democratic?
It just says informal meetings, the chair guides without participating in discussion. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Justice,
Sorry,
please.
so there was information provided to us that kind of breaks down and compares the democratic rules versus the Robert's Rules of Order. The Robert's Rule of Order are a lot more formalistic. They require very distinct phrases for you to be able to use, to be able to articulate to make something happen. For example, you have to adjourn the meeting. For example, you have to move to make an amendment. It has to be seconded, and you have to make sure that you use those phrases. You're not using those phrases, and you're not acting within the Robert's Rules of Order. The Democratic rules are a lot more lax and a lot more loose, and so it's a lot more informal. And people are able to discuss motions, talk to things a little bit more deliberately without making those critical statements. The difference in the size of the rules is essentially, Robert's Rules of Order is like, the real Robert's Rules of Order is like 700 pages, and the Democratic rules is like 27 pages. And so those are kind of the differences between the two. Most people don't follow the actual full Robert's Rules of Order. They're just some semblance of the Robert's Rules of Order related to those issues.
Madeline, and then Tim, and then maybe we're ready for a vote.
Yeah, they're both parliamentary, so they follow a similar pattern. The Democratic Rules of Order are much simpler and would be easier for all of us to learn, for those of us who haven't learned Robert's Rules, which is much more complex. And we'd also like to discuss a modified consensus version of something that we could just agree to use today. So that's what I would prefer, is if we could have a little bit more of a framework of discussion before we move to make a decision on how we're deciding things.
Tim, please.
I really don't think anyone was talking about using the 700 pages. I think the 4-sentence summary Trish gave of what she thought when she made the motion is really what we're talking about, which is really just everyone has an opportunity to discuss. At the end of the day, we have a vote, and it's a 51%, whatever you want to call it, vote. Again, just for today, just so we can talk about all of the probably good proposals that you have, I don't think we need to make this part more complicated than it need be. We're just talking about how we talk about what we're going to end up having.
Okay, just a reminder, this is about adopting the Robert's Rules of Order for this meeting and have me facilitate Tita, and then maybe a vote. Go.
I mean, yeah, this is going to be absolutely useful for today. It's going to be an orderly process, just to use Robert's Rules. It's going to be one person at a time. It's going to be using motions and using a second. It will, includes debate, healthy debate, and some voting, which I think we've been doing so far. And it does give everybody equal rights. So I really enjoy that. I think we should move the motion, and I'd be happy to second it.
Okay, it was actually, the motion was done by Trish and seconded by Tim. And so the motion is adopt the Robert Rules of Order for this meeting and for me to facilitate. And is everybody ready to call the roll? I'm kind of just looking for head nods at this point. Yes, okay, great. I'll read your name and then ask for you to vote yes, no, or abstain. And we're going to go in alphabetical order. So Ashby?
Yes.
Batla?
Yes.
Brooks?
Yes.
Madeline? Or Carol, sorry.
No.
Citronbum? Frigette?
Yes.
Gardner?
Yes.
Halsey? It's online, maybe. Halsey's not online. Hayes is not online. Herrera?
Yes.
Jimenez?
Yes.
LaRouse?
Yes.
Lane Howe?
Yes.
Maddox?
Yes.
Jesse is not here. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Pitts?
No.
Pratt?
Yes.
Ross?
No.
Summerfield?
Yes.
And Springer's not here, so. It's 14 yeses, 3 nos, 4 absences. The motion is passed. So we'll use Robert's Rules of Order and have me facilitate for this meeting, and then you all can make a decision going forward for future things. Is there another motion on the table? I don't know which hand was up first. Dina, please.
Yes. One thing I wanted to mention that's a little bit time sensitive, and I would have loved to tell everyone before so you have context, but we're not allowed to do that. I did, once again, like I said, invite Councillor Canal to come speak about the PAC, and he does have a hard stop of 7 p.m., so I do want to value his time. And again, the reason I invited him was to discuss his work on the PAC, specifically their leadership structure, as well as their governance, as the PAC informs the work of the CBPA. So I would like to make a motion to have Councillor Canal come up and speak, whether it's now or sometime, hopefully before 7 p.m. when he has to leave. So
I second your motion.
Sorry, who was the second? Green? Thank you. Okay. Is there any discussion about the motion to adjust the agenda and invite Councillor Canal to present to the board? Sarah and then Tim? Nope, sorry. Sarah, please.
Hi, and this is with all due respect to Councilor Canal. I take a little issue with you all deciding to invite someone to speak to the board about this stuff when this was supposed to be just about, I mean, I absolutely think it's valuable at some point, but it seems like you kind of steamrolled it here when the whole thing's supposed to be about discussing internal governances kind of without any outside input.
Okay, so.
And this, I mean, like I said, I think input is incredibly valuable. It's just, it seems kind of in this meeting that it should have been discussed ahead of time before you did that.
So Tim Pitts, please, Atticus, Jillian, Ash, Trish. I'm going to write those down.
I just have to say briefly, I understand hurt feelings if people feel like there was like exclusion or people working on things. I think people are just super excited and super trying to like make things happen and get things going. And please, God, let's not all talk about if we're going to hear from Councillor Canal or not. Please, 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 can we hold our comments and just vote on this?
Atticus?
Yeah, never mind.
Okay. Jillian?
Just let him speak.
Ash?
Yeah, let's hear from him, please.
Okay. Trish?
I absolutely agree. The voice of the experience is really important.
Okay. Is everybody, turning to online people? Anybody want to comment? Okay, we'll vote. And we'll go in alphabetical order again. Kyle?
Yes.
Murtaza?
Yes.
Justice?
Yes.
Madeline?
Yes.
Sarah?
Go for it.
Green?
Yes.
Trish?
Yes.
Skylar is absent. Terrence is absent. Jillian?
Yes.
Ash?
Yes.
Pete?
I'm going to go with a reluctant yes.
Tita?
Yes, please.
Shelley?
Yes.
Jesse is not here, sorry. Tim O'Donnell?
Yes.
Tim Pitts?
Yes.
Tisha?
Yes.
Dina?
yes.
Atticus?
Yes.
Great. That motion is carried. Councillor Canal, you're invited up to present to the board. Thank you so much.
Everybody. Let me start by two observations that were not planned. One is if at any point you would like assistance finding a facilitator, I will offer to not only find you one, but pay for it out of my office budget for your next meeting. And secondly, while using Robert's rules for however long you do, I ask for unanimous consent is a way to get out of having to do a roll call on the things that you are unanimous on. My name is Samir Kanal. I am a city councilor now, but I'm speaking in my capacity as former project manager for the entire duration of the Police Accountability Commission. Thank you to more than just the two people who made the comment earlier, but all of you who reached out over the last 4 weeks to talk, and I'm excited to get a chance to speak to you today. I have slides that my team put together. I'm not going to go through them all in like a reading it kind of way because I want to value your time. But I did want to just kind of, they'll be on the screen, theoretically. I did just want to take a second to go through a couple things about how the PAC did its work. First, let me note that everything I say to you is advice and suggestions. Under the Charter 2-1006, you have independent judgment and nobody can interfere with that independent judgment. Obviously, you're bound by the law, but council cannot tell you what to do except in the context of legislation. So please take everything I say with that, and I emailed this over to you so you know that. A little bit of background. In July 2020, City Council referred a ballot measure to create this oversight board to the public. It was adopted with an 82 to 18% margin. That created Section 210 of the city charter, which is the overarching governance for this board. Charter text is broad, it doesn't have details, so the City Council created the Police Accountability Commission in December 2020, put people on it in July, and it started meeting in December 2021. And if that year feels like a long time to you, I'm sure you've all experienced that delay here, and that's kind of how it works sometimes. It concluded its work in actually August 2023, that's a typo, 20 volunteers on it at a time, and it came up with some outcome documents that you can see here. I've actually got a couple that I printed out for reference, just to show you an example of them, not for specifics here. They referred a 95-page code proposal for what would eventually set up what's now Title 35 of the code to create you, and then a report accompanying that. And then the City Council made some significant changes to it, but adopted it, and that created Code Title 35. Core concepts, and this is my accounting of it as a staffer. I didn't make these decisions, and in a couple cases I disagreed with them, but I'm here to tell you what they were, and take this with a little bit of a grain of salt that I'm a staffer in that context and made it that way. But I think the biggest things that kind of defined its core processes were community first. There was a community engagement framework that talked about public comment before every substantive vote. So you wouldn't vote on a motion like the one you just did. You wouldn't take necessarily public comment before the vote you just took on using Robert's rules, but on the actual decisions. And community engagement both before and during the discussion on what your proposals might be. Values alignment, and that doesn't mean aligning to some external values force, but coming up with a list of values and goals for the work, which included success criteria. I have a copy of this here, but it was basically, if the City Council adopted what we're proposing, would we have created a system that, insert success criteria here? And they developed those before they started on any of the work. And then later, before they circled back at the very end and took the vote, they said, did this proposal we're putting forward build that system? Did it build the system that does a second criteria? And they went through all of those before making the final vote. They broke up the scope of work the council gave them into 6 phases. Collectively, that added up to the work, but they sequenced it so you weren't tackling everything at once. And finally, rotational collaborative leadership, which they had internal documents that reflected that. They broke up the work. I'm not going to go through all this, but they started with a private meet and greet. Cannot suggest that enough. It's okay if you're not talking about the work. And then had a couple interim agreements, the things that you can decide on that help you decide the other things, and then circle back to, and I'll get to that in a second, and took volunteers for committees. So at any point, someone today could ask, who would like to volunteer? And as long as it's fewer than 11 of you, you can have volunteers jump in on writing the agenda for the next meeting, for example, as an interim step until you have leadership. They did the first phase was just self-governance. Second phase was fact-finding, looking at other cities, looking at what's working or not working in their view in Portland. Phase 3 was your access to information, how the individual accountability complaint system works, and structural oversight, which is the policy component of the CBPA's work. The fourth phase was board membership, oversight, staff, and reporting and transparency. And throughout this process, they were developing just kind of bullet point areas of agreement. They weren't writing legal text. Fifth phase was the transition plan. There has actually been a transition plan, the second half of which include the phase that what you are doing right now, what they suggested to you to do, as well as how it interacts with the broader system. That's where they named it, the CBPA and the OCPA. And then the last phase was more community engagement and converting everything into legalese. And then they presented it to council. They also did one meet and greet. They called it a community building session every 2 or 3 months throughout the entire process. They got started by breaking up their future work, developing their internal processes, creating committees. And I'll note that unlike the CBPA, they didn't need to talk about staff support because the commission had a limited duration and I had a limited duration in my then job, and those aligned. So they didn't actually have to talk about it the way that you did with Modus and all of that. I'll also note that they made 2 interim decisions just to kind of level set, and those were community agreements and to take public comment before every substantive vote. The tracks of work that seem to make sense here for startup for the CBPA, and I emailed this to your staff, community agreements. Some are all internal processes, including how you make decisions and what you're looking for in leadership, including how long they're leaders for, selecting those first leaders, and developing other internal processes. That tends to make sense in that order. Staffing, obviously you have to hire a director before you can hire anybody else. And committee setup. And here there's a few ideas I've heard you all say, these are not from me, but engagement, fiscal or budget, staffing plan development, and internal processes like a bylaws committee. You can make interim decisions or permanent ones. One reason that interim decisions keep getting brought up is because everything feels nebulous when nothing's decided. And if you can make a decision that lasts 2 or 3 meetings, that can help build a foundation that you can build other things around, and then come back to that first thing and say, well, maybe we need to update that. You can do that if we'll make a decision that just holds for the next 2 or 3 meetings, or you can make a decision that's like from now until the director's hired, or some other event-based trigger for when you'd revisit it. Those decisions at the startup include community agreements. These are collaborative agreements you hold to without needing to be bound by a rule. They're usually read out loud at the beginning of every meeting. A couple examples of them, these are the Police Accountability Commission's ones, were things like keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of the work. Give notice if you are unable to attend the meeting. Contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meets your needs. Use I statements. Keep in mind that everyone has their own truth. These aren't binding rules on how you take a decision. They're about culture, and they are benefited by when someone is out of line with them. This is something that an external entity doesn't enforce. You enforce on each other by calling someone in and asking them, hey, just as a reminder, use an I statement. It's one of our community agreements. Bylaws are the opposite. That's binding rules, how the board is structured. There's a city template on it, but it's basically the decisions you get to make within the construct of the law, federal, state, or city law. And one thing that they do is provide predictability and confidence so that someone watching can know how the decision was made and what exactly got decided on. And that includes things like Robert's Rules or any other system. Staff can frame big picture questions so that they're able to help the conversation happen without influencing. The PAC was asked, are you okay with approving interim community agreements? Are you okay with the concepts of phases of work? What are some of the guiding principles for governance that you'd like to see in the bylaws? And who should we be talking to in the context of community engagement? Morphing that over to the CBPA, that could look like the question you were already asked. Are you okay with hiring a contractor to hire the director? Do you want to volunteer for signing up for a committee, or do you want to volunteer for writing an agenda before the next meeting? But it could also look like, do you want 1 chair, or do you want 2 or 3 co-chairs? How long do you want them to serve for? How many leaders will exist if you create a committee, and how are they chosen? What the PAC did, they approved those interim community agreements. They revisited and finished the bylaws using those interim structures 3 months later. They made some more detailed decisions on their internal processes 9 months later. And that wasn't like they were working the whole 9 months. They paused and came back to it later. The original list of community agreements was an email that went out from me and said, hey, what do you want to see? Put that all into a list and then walked through it one by one. Does everybody agree to these? And anything that was consensus got in, and they used that for those first 9 months until they developed the list that I'm referring to here. Rotational leadership, they decided to do 3 co-chairs for the commission at any given time, and they rotated them throughout those phases of work. That meant that 17 different commissioners served over the 20 months of the commission as a co-chair. That was a decision. It's much more diversified, dispersed leadership. 2 co-chairs for each committee, and there were 2 or 3 committees every phase of work. And finally, they chose modified consensus over Robert's rules. And modified consensus means you discuss until you can get to a point where there's consensus, and consensus means lack of strong opposition. So the question wouldn't be how do you vote each person in order, it was, is there strong opposition to this proposal? Okay, seeing that there is, let's keep discussing. And at some point, the co-chairs decided, and this only happened, I think Debbie might remember 3 or 4 times, but some that were Tim, you might, like very, very few times, like on one hand, they actually had to take a vote throughout the entirety, and that's on motions as well as their outcomes, because the discussion actually usually got people there because it was, maybe we could tweak that to get to consensus. And if you're just neutral on it, you don't vote no, was the idea. And in those scenarios where it wasn't possible, it was a 60% vote. So that people felt more confident with the decision. And this is how it worked. Members make a proposal, or co-chairs can distill discussion into a proposal. You discuss and try to find consensus, deliberate in the spirit of compromise, ask if there's strong opposition, and if there's none, you're done. It's approved. If there is strong opposition, you kind of repeat the discussion process, and you can tweak it as you go. And finally, if consensus is not achievable, you decide to vote, or, and I think this happened one time that I can recall, table it to the next meeting. And then the decision was made by the co-chairs of when consensus isn't achievable, and the facilitators developed consistent language of how they framed the questions. And then I mentioned public comment before every substantive decision. I put these up here. The tinyurl.com/PAC decisions have every decision the PAC made. Some of these areas of agreement are pretty basic. You have bylaws that look like bylaws. They're very formalized. But you also have agendas, scopes, things like that. I'm going to hand these out, take one. They're all a little different from each other. And then for future reference, because it's long and I don't want to talk through it with all of you here, it's a 504-page report. The final report's all at tinyurl.com/PAC recommendations. So I'll stop here and take questions, but I did also want to shout out the people who actually did all the work, the volunteers on the PAC, and threw their names on this slide. But I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Dina, and then Jillian. And
I won't take up too much time, but first of all, thank you so much for being here. I know I gave you short notice, so I really appreciate that, and this was incredibly informative. Looking at my email, I don't have a copy of this PowerPoint yet. Would you be able to send it so I can reference it throughout this meeting? Because I think it could be really valuable.
Yeah, I can send it to everybody.
Thank you.
Jillian?
Hi, thanks so much for being here. I'm still figuring out where I should put my face in relation to the microphone. Is this normal? Okay. You mentioned taking public comment before every substantive decision. Could you describe like what would be a substantive versus non-substantive decision?
Yeah, great question. The mics are always awkward. It never gets less awkward. The difference is whether it's about the work or about how you're talking about the work, basically. So if you're talking about changing, like the motion that Trish made earlier today to use Robert's rules for the purpose of this meeting is not substantive. It doesn't relate to accountability in any way. But deciding to hire Modus, that's a substantive decision. The contrast is procedure. So if you're talking about how you do a thing versus talking about doing a thing. And I'm obviously oversimplifying and using the word thing too much, but that's the core difference. And I can send, there's details pulled out in the bylaws, but that's the simple version.
Kyle?
Can you remind me, were y'all subject to public meeting laws?
Yes, 2 caveats. One is public meetings law changed on, I believe, January 1st, 2025. So it was the old version. It's pretty similar. The difference is they increased some things on serial communications and things like that, and Heidi can speak more to that than I can. They actually just made a change at the state again, so that made it less stringent because it was viewed as unworkable by a lot of local jurisdictions, including us in City Hall. But in terms of the broad framework, yeah. So the PAC never used Google Docs, for example, to work on things in an official sense outside of meetings. But if there were three commission co-chairs, 2 committee co-chairs, 2 of the other committee, those 7 people could have a weekly agenda setting conversation, and the other folks didn't have to be there. They could do community building sessions, and everybody would add a couple songs to the playlist, and we just put it on the background, we'd have pizza or whatever, and people would get to know each other as humans, which really helps with the work. The other thing that you can do outside of it to some degree, and I don't know, this is the one I'd ask Heidi on, is trainings, because I don't know if you've all met with the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition or the Mental Health Alliance, but I'm pretty sure that was something that was proposed very strongly. They are the Friends of the Court in the settlement agreement, which, if you don't know, the city of Portland was sued by the Federal Department of Justice for unconstitutional policing practices and entered into an agreement with the feds in 2014. And this process is subject to that. And in that lawsuit, there are 2 Friends of the Court, which are those 2 groups. And they've been working on this longer than anybody pretty much around, except some of the people in the back row. So I want to make sure that, like, those sorts of things, I don't know if you can do that in public or private. You can definitely do it.
Just to follow up, so can you talk about how y'all figured out a system to share work asynchronously? And then in relation to that, what were the sort of deltas of your model? Where did y'all struggle? What did you work through? That sort of thing.
Asynchronously was really in and out, hub and spoke with staff. And that put a lot of load on me. But, we'd send out, if anything got sent in, we'd send out a preliminary agenda and documents about 5 to 7 days in advance when everything was posted. And then there'd be another final set of documents that the conversation would include that we'd send out day of. And every major decision had like a document called potential agreement that was like a page that it would actually lay out what the question you're going to be asked is to approve. The deltas were largely around, Google Docs would have made life a lot easier. I think or shared, OneDrive, whatever. We could make a folder and share things, but they couldn't be editable between. So you can, and I don't know if that's still true. Again, the law's changed, and Heidi is there. And I'll also note, we did use the city attorneys throughout, but the PAC also did hire outside legal counsel for the last few months, and that lawyer actually converted all of the things that were written in paragraph and sentence form into legalese for the proposal. It's a bit of a tangent, but.
Atticus?
Could you quickly repeat the name of those 2 groups that you mentioned, the Mental Health Alliance and?
Yeah, the Mental Health Alliance, which is different from the Mental Health Association, just that always happens. And then the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform. Long name, I know. Yeah, and I know Reverend Haynes would probably be very happy to come and chat or send someone. One thing I didn't mention real quick, there's a community agreement. I think it's actually the last one, is accept non-closure. And if I could put my thumb on the scale, not in a formal way, but in a suggestion way, that's one of the most important things. You have to have closure by the last vote. But there will probably be things you can't get done in a given conversation.
Any other questions for Councilor Knoll and Madeline? And then Ash?
Could you give us a little bit more information about how other staff, like facilitators, could support the process that we're in right now? I know we don't have a project manager like you were for the PAC, but maybe that is something that we could do. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think Kristen can clarify sort of her guardrails or parameters for her position. What a facilitator can do is a couple different things. They can provide a separate person who's very clearly not part of the city apparatus to be the person framing your questions and debates. They can do a weighted stack, which is to say, I think, Kristen, you started this process in terms of calling on the person who hasn't spoken first, the first time before the person who's already spoken. But it can also be, a weighted stack is also used for things like incorporating an equity lens into who's getting time. The sort of step up, step back, but through who's calling on people. The facilitators often were involved in when there was clearly some heated conversation during a meeting. They could get 2 or 3 members together outside of a meeting and mediate it. These were all professional mediators by training in some way. The facilitators also did a good job of conducting town halls and other community engagement events. That's maybe more relevant to your policy work than your individual complaint work, but those are things that they could do. They were all equity practitioners. They're all mediators in that kind of space, and there are 5 of them that I'd recommend and have brought up a couple times, but I haven't sent all the details over yet to staff, so I will do that.
Ash?
You're right, it doesn't get any easier. Yeah, thanks, Madeline, because that's really, really interesting to me to have an outside facilitator. So I'd be really interested in hearing more about that and the 5 potential people that you have in mind for that. You said something about a private meet and greet, and I'd love to know more about what does that look like?
Well, we started in 2021, and so that, just keeping that in mind, that meant that the pattern was everything was still over Zoom. Just keeping that context. So the first thing was a Zoom call where everybody just jumped on and we kind of went around and said, tell us a little bit about yourself. There was no press on, there's no cameras, nobody could see it. And some people got more vulnerable, some people got very vulnerable, and some people got a tiny bit vulnerable. But it was up to you. And it got to know each other as people and understand that, people have concerns sometimes around these decisions. Like, for example, Robert's Rules is not just about efficiency. It's also about how do I feel coming into this system. Some people love it. Some people don't love it. Same thing with modified consensus. There's pros and cons to every decision you can make, but the having those sorts of, someone talking about a life experience of not being heard can help you frame your thoughts around what's the best system of governance that can maximize their ability to participate. And then that was the first one, but we also asked about community agreements, what's worked before. So one of the members who's here said always confront oppression. And that was a really interesting one that I don't think maybe one other person had heard. But I remember who said it. I actually remember who said each and every one of these because that was a big discussion we had. And then afterwards, it was just, let's hang out, let's talk, let's get a chance to say what's going on in our lives. I can't really step up to be a co-chair next term because I'm, so whatever family thing is going on. It has nothing to do with the work, but just what's going on in your life. It helps a lot in ways that you can't really write down. But it is also a scheduling issue, so especially because you want to maximize everyone who's there. And as the members of it may recall, it was really hard to get everybody in the same place for everything.
Great. Thank you so much.
Tim?
Yeah, could you just please briefly talk about, as we think about our leadership structure, 3 co-chairs versus 2, how you saw things working with 3 versus if 2 would have been better?
Yeah, there was a member who, when we talked about 2, there was a member who thought that when there were 2, there'd be disagreements and then the tie would be broken by the staff. And so they suggested 3. That felt unwieldy to some other members because talking about committees, you're going to have 9 of the 20 people do something as opposed to 6 in a given phase, and rotate felt unwieldy to others. This was in parallel to the modified consensus decision-making, which sort of mooted the point by saying there's not going to be ties that you vote on. It's going to be let's talk until we're comfortable with this. And, I'm a co-chair of a committee over there now, and we don't vote. We just talk it out till we're on the same page. And so the compromise was the full commission had 3 co-chairs. The first phase, it only had 2. That's how it got to 17 people who took part. But the committees had 2 co-chairs. It's logistics is the main reason why 3 is harder than 2. There's a big difference between a chair and co-chairs. I'll say that much. But the difference between 3 and 2 is primarily around logistics, getting everybody in the same place at the same time, even over Zoom. And we did all the agenda setting meetings over Zoom. None of that was in person. In fact, really, the last few meetings were the only ones they were ever in person, and they were in this room, so good to be back. Yeah.
Jillian, I think I accidentally skipped you.
That's okay, I'm not mad. I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the different committees that you had over like the different phases of work that you mentioned.
Yeah, so the first phase was organizational. So there was a committee that wrote the community engagement framework and reported it back to the full group. These all had 7 to 10 people on them. There were 20 total members. It couldn't have more than 10. Some people were on 0 committees, and they'd get on committees in the next phase, and some would be on 1. Nobody was ever on all of them. So sometimes you could be on 2 if there were 3 committees. There was a committee that drafted bylaws, and then the full commission drafted the agenda, which is what broke it up into the phases, and the values and goals, which were those success criteria I mentioned. Second one was all about fact-finding. So there were committees that talked about research that they'd found in other jurisdictions. How does New York's Civilian Complaint Review Board do this? How does San Francisco or LA County? How does LA County differ from LA City? And then in the full commission, there was a lot of how do you see the current system failing or doing well of police accountability? And so it was based on committees that dealt with that particular phase. In the third phase, it was powers and duties. What can the system do? So there was one on how can it access information. That's where the concept of authority to subpoena documents was fleshed out. Another committee was on officer accountability, which was the system that related to how the complaint structure would work. They proposed 5-member panels. That's where the paneling conversation happened. The city council eventually changed that to 3, by the way. But the third one was on policy. They called it structural oversight. Then they got to structure and details of the system. So there was one on board membership. They recommended a 33-member board, by the way. The council picked 21, so that's how it became 21. There was another one on the oversight staff and how that'll work. That's where the idea of a complaint navigator came from. And then the third committee was on, I'm trying to remember here, reporting and transparency. Sorry, Debbie, I forgot. And how information would be made public and when. Then they got to transition plan and broader system. They came up with the transition plan and how it should relate to the rest of the system. So there's PSEP down this, how does it relate to the Training Advisory Council? How does it, those sorts of questions. And then the last phase didn't have any committees because it was really just community engagement and legal consultation and spending a lot of time with those lawyers who did a great job.
Pete, then Madeline, and then Sarah.
I'm curious how you prioritized and sequenced your work, and the reason I'm asking this is because as a new body, we're talking about bylaws and agreements and this and that, but I think what's going to be really important for us is to prioritize and sequence them in a way that makes sense and not do it simply to do it.
Yeah, so 2 parts. When the PAC was created, the city council gave it a list of things to do. So they broke it, they took the time in a committee to break that up into 6 phases, which was, by the way, we got the idea of phases of work from the Charter Commission, which was about 7 months ahead of us in recommending the charter change that eventually created our new form of government. That's also how these are all formatted, the areas of agreement, why they're bullet points that were later converted to text. That's also a structure we copied from them. And then they also wrote down what happens on an ongoing basis. So, for example, they brought in every member of, there were only 5 then, every member of city council to talk to them, brought in the PPA, and the PPCOA was invited. They brought in the chief. And those were all people who are key experts to hear from. So they took an existing list and sequenced it. The CBP is a little different, but the transition plan and the settlement agreement offer some guidance as to what you have to do before complaints can start getting taken. And that's why I put up the 3 tracks of sort of your internal structure, committees, things like that, your internal governance, bylaws. You have to know how many chairs or co-chairs you have before you elect them, right? So there's some sort of logical experts or obvious things on that ordering. And then the third thing is the staffing. And the same way, you got to hire a director before they can hire everybody else. So that's, I think you can apply the same concept even if the list isn't sort of provided the way it was to the PAC.
Madeline, Sarah, and then Kyle, and then I know Counselor had a hard out, so if questions can be quick, please.
Yeah, we might need more time for this in the future. But speaking of the transition plan, I know that wasn't officially adopted by the previous city council, but are there parts of that plan that you would recommend that we look at closely as we move forward?
Yeah, and I brought copies. Just a couple, but I think keep in mind when you read this, it was building, the transition plan is how you get to a destination, right? And the destination that they were writing for is what they proposed that this would look like. So a 33-member board. There, you have to read it with that grain of salt because we don't have a 33-member board, and there are plenty of other changes that were made. So take it with that grain of salt. But one thing that had was in here that I thought was really important was board member training. And the things that the PAC felt you needed to know. I don't know if those are requirements or not, and I haven't cross-checked that list, but even if they're not requirements, they're a good list of things you might want to read. Another example is the transfer of active cases received under the old system. So when Yume Delgado came in and talked about the Citizen Review Committee and how they're basically in limbo for a long period of time, there was a conversation around, could there be a way with the agreement of the collective bargaining units, right, having the PPA or PPCOA would have to be a part of this conversation. Is there a possibility that gets their workload cleared so that they can actually wrap up their work? That's something you don't have to decide today, but you might be talking about it in 6 to 12 months. So I'll leave all these here, and I'd say, like, I didn't give enough for everybody because I didn't want to waste paper, but grab one thing and you might, everybody will collectively have an example, but those links have everything.
Sarah, please.
Can you discuss agenda setting? How does that, I think you mentioned that the co-chairs kind of set the agenda for, but how actually does that work?
Yeah, so the list that the council gave was broken up into these phases. And then at the beginning of the phase, they'd elect, well, really the end of the previous phase, they'd elect co-chairs. And then they'd look and see, well, we got to do these 8 things. We've got about 2-3 months to do. How do we want to sequence it? Who do we want to invite in? Maybe we want to invite in the Citizen Review Committee. Maybe this is a good time to bring in the chief.
I kind of meant like for each meeting rather than as a whole.
And so that would be the sort of more than 1 week out. So you might be, we're inviting Commissioner Mapps or Commissioner Gonzalez to come in, and then they say they're available. And so as you get closer, you're kind of penciling, and then the week, well, I guess 8 to 10 days before, they'd meet on like Thursday, and then the Monday before we do agenda setting, I think. And they'd say, well, what do we have to do this week? Has anybody confirmed? If not, what are we going to talk about? And agendas were pretty broad. They always included some very structured things. There was a skeleton agenda. One concept was, if you've heard of a parking lot, which is an idea we don't have time for, let's stick it in the parking lot. We'll come back to it later. They called it a garden plot. And the reason they picked that term is so that, because sometimes those topics still get worked on in some way, and so they can still grow when you're not looking at them. But it's the same concept, and they'd review that every time. Just what do we have coming up? Is there anything on that list that people want to make sure we talk about next week? But really, it's that 9 days before, Zoom call, staff, facilitators, co-chairs of all the committees. They'd work out the next few agendas. If you didn't have a committee meeting the next week, skip it. If you're a committee co-chair. If the full commission isn't meeting, you could choose to be there. You could skip it too.
Kyle?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a quick 2-parter. The first one was the decision to have the board members have staggered terms in part a way to avoid institutional brain drain as people leave?
I believe so. I think, yeah, the idea that they would turn over. Also, because there's often delays in City Hall getting people appointed, you don't want terms to end and then there not to be quorum.
Got it. Okay, and then the second part is, do you think theoretically it would be prudent to have a 3-year term person on the committees to start?
It kind of depends on how you set up your committees. If your committee is designed to be ongoing, like a fiscal committee, it's probably good to have a balance of people 1, 2, and 3-year terms.
Yeah.
If, on the other hand, it's like a bylaws drafting committee, it really doesn't matter. It's going to be done before your terms are up next February or whatever, January, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's up to you how you structure it.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Canal. I know it's past 7.
Appreciate it. I'm going to get out of here.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Yep, if you want to leave those there. Thank you so much. Prior to that discussion, there was a draft proposal, agenda draft, and a draft bylaws that were passed out to everybody. I emailed it to the entire board so that folks online have it. I'll get that on the website tomorrow. So that way folks in the room will be able to access it after the fact. So if there's a motion to adopt this agenda, putting that forward for folks to consider.
I'd like to just kind of describe the agenda before we do that. And we don't have to adopt the whole thing. This was just in the hopes of helping us move forward together as a body. So not really sorry if anyone feels steamrolled. That definitely was not the intention. We were just hoping to try to create some sort of framework so we could all move forward together and have, well-framed discussions. So the agenda that Dina and I came up with together was first to finalize an agenda together and approve that. To finalize some temporary meeting agreements, we decided on Robert's rules for this meeting, which is fine. We have a proposed temporary agreements that's on the back that might change based on some things that Councilor Canal said for the next meeting, perhaps. But that's just for your information since we already chose Robert's rules. We wanted, before we started getting into important votes, to vote to officially agree to have public comment before all. I said substantial, excuse me, it should have been substantive, so wrong word there. You can cross out substantial every time I wrote it, and I meant substantive. So we just wanted to agree on that before we had any discussions about substantive decisions that we needed to vote on. We already had Councilor Canal come, so thank you very much for that. I think we actually maybe had these backwards based on what Councilor Canal's definition was, but we wanted to be able to basically briefly discuss and hopefully relatively quickly vote on a few things that don't need public comment so that we can move some things forward that we want to happen in between this meeting and the next meeting potentially. And then have public comment on the things that we decide do need comment to happen before we discuss them in detail. And we thought that ideally, in order to try to move some of those things forward that can be moved forward in between this meeting and the next one, that we could have kind of a relatively brief discussion at first and see where we have alignment already. And then if there are items where there's substantial disagreement, then we can table those either to the end of this meeting or to the next meeting, just so that we can talk through the things that maybe we are already aligned on and we can move those things forward between now and the next meeting. Do you have anything else you want to say about it?
No, I want to make it clear that our intention is not to make anyone feel steamrolled or taken off guard. If we could send all these materials and tell you that Councilor Canal is going to be here beforehand, I would do that. And I send that information to Kristen before anything else. But due to public meeting records law, we simply cannot do that. We're just two people who are very passionate and have the time to meet with stakeholders and SMEs. And we want to come and give people context, because a lot of the time we are lacking context. So I hope that people understand our intention, and we're not telling you what to do. We're just providing some options, and we did the research.
And just one more for clarification. So the bylaws draft is essentially just, we were hoping to maybe decide together to move forward with the PAC bylaws as a template for our own bylaws. So this is just sort of an example of where we could start. And it's basically, we took the PAC bylaws, we basically just changed everywhere that it said commissioner to board member, and changed everywhere that it said PAC to CBPA. And then the parts that did not apply to us, we took those out and replace them with things directly from code that would apply to us in those sections, if that makes sense. So in the bylaws, the draft bylaws, everything that's in italics is from code, and then everything that is not from italics is based on the PAC bylaws.
And I'll just comment that, yes, Dina did let me know that she invited Counselor Canal to speak tonight. I got that email this morning. The proposed draft and the bylaws draft is new to me as well. So,
yes,
so
apologies.
folks know. And then I'm just writing down names. Sorry. Kyle, Tita, Trish, Tim, and then I thought I saw one more hand. Atticus. Okay. So Kyle, please.
Yeah, I was just hoping that we could have sort of a values alignment as a group, just kind of talk about what we want out of these meetings, why a certain structure, what we hate about meetings, what we want to get out of these, specifically how we talk to each other. It's a way of getting to know each other too. If we talk about values first before we talk about sort of order and structure, it would just be my preference, and I'd love to hear what other people think.
Tita, and then Trish.
My comment is more so based on responding to you bringing up the draft. I would like to run it by council, if possible, perhaps Heidi, just because it sounds very complex, and I'm happy to have anything that helps us be more administratively prepared, certainly adopted. I'm looking forward to reading it, and I'm so glad that you guys got together with Kunal. I also had the opportunity to have a call with him and get some feedback. And, I certainly think we're coming along. I know that I was looking at being farther along in the process, but I also think it's important to focus on quality and not rush so that we have to repair decisions or reverse decisions. So thank you for doing that.
Trish?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. Firstly, this is amazing. You clearly put a lot of work in, and whether we decide to ditch it or accept it, it really provides a place from which we can analyze things, and I really profoundly appreciate that. I also think process, particularly as we begin, is at least as important as, shall we say, the substantive or substantial or whatever, decisions. I certainly think that having some sort of agreement about how we approach each other, kind of the rules of, the I statements, et cetera, that Commissioner Knoll spoke of, would be really important to take care of first. I also think bylaws are, those are exceedingly important, and I think take a lot of, certainly examination by each of us individually. But I also think, are there any community members we should be discussing this with? Governmental, I don't know. And, even when I look at the draft, I apologize this, but vote to move forward with PNWFC. I'm going, what is that? And then I see capital P private, capital M meetings for capital B board, capital R relationships. Is there a meaning to those capitalized? Is there a private meetings for board relationships document? Again, I think a lot of these are raising really important issues that we need to grapple with. But I am in no way ready to say, okay, I'm going to go for this or go back to Robert's rules or go to a whole nother, model. So, thanks.
Tim, and then I'm getting new names or adding names to the list, so I'll call you when it's time. But Tim Pitts, please.
Yeah, so these are all definitely things we need to work on. We also certainly need to talk about our next meeting time tonight, because as it stands, we have one in a month. And I think we loosely discussed that every other week might make more sense, so we definitely need that on the agenda. Tonight's only agenda item is supposed to be governance, though, and I do think it's great that we decided to temporarily use Robert's Rules of Orders for tonight, but we really need to adopt a system of governance for our following meetings. So if people collectively feel like we didn't have the opportunity or didn't take the opportunity to learn about the different alternatives and you feel like we can't have that conversation, then that's one thing. But if we're ready to have that conversation, then we really need to get our governance set so that then next meeting we know how we're going to run things, and then we can work through all the things on the list, including first and foremost values.
Justice, please.
You have stated my point. We already had an agenda. Our agenda was to do the rules and go over that. And so that's where I think we need to focus on. I appreciate the excitement and fervor in which this was put together. I appreciate the work that happened with this. But as we heard from the counselor, like, we have to have a basic rules to be able to move forward with this. And I think this kind of puts the cart before the horse. Also, I think it's important to think about timing. Subcommittees should be formed, things should happen, we should walk through, and we should have collective ideas from more than just two of our committee members related to these things before we put them forward with the rationale explained and ideas vetted through multiple different sources related to these issues. And I do understand why y'all did this, and you did an excellent job, but I think right now we just need to focus on what are going to be our rules and why we're adopting that format.
Jillian, please.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all so much for doing this. And in general, going forward, because of the public meetings laws things, I'm never going to be upset if anybody brings something forward to, like, we all get to vote on it, we all get to discuss it here. So I don't have a problem with people who have the time and initiative preparing things to bring to this meeting. I think it's awesome. I hope that I will also have time to do that at a certain point. But I also agree with Justice and others who said that, just out of respect for our past selves at the last meeting and Counselor Canal's time and advice and what we need to get done going forward, we should reorient this meeting to focus on our governance structure. Check.
Pete, and then Madeline, and then I'll go to Tim O'Donnell, and then online if anybody wants to comment.
Actually, I don't have anything to add. I think we just need to focus on the governance structure. We need to know how we're going to operate, and then we can make decisions. I think we've touched upon a lot of very important points, everything from subcommittees to chairs and voting process, et cetera, et cetera. We need to get that straight. Once that's done, then we can move on to the details and the real meat. I would just add, sorry, I do think we need to take some time to say what is the difference between Robert's rules versus consensus versus what is a democratic process, and then we can decide what is the best process for us. All that is doing is saying this is a process that we want to follow. But it also assumes that we've all done our homework and understand what those processes and different systems are. That was basically our homework between last meeting and this meeting.
Okay, next is Madeline, then Tim O'Donnell, Atticus, Trish, Tita.
Thank you, everyone. So just to be clear, Dina, and our goal was not to divert the meeting from talking about governance. It was to get us to governance conversations. I agree about the values discussion, the community agreements, and we can have that conversation in a private meeting if we would like, the same way that the PAC did. And I think it might be a more productive conversation to have it as a more casual conversation, hopefully facilitated. So the things that we're asking to move forward, apologies for the acronym, PNWFC is Pacific Northwest Family Circle, and that's part of our training that we still need to do, and our training deadline currently is in mid-April, so we don't have a lot of meetings between now and then, so we were hoping we could just confirm that Kristen could move forward with reaching out to Pacific Northwest Family Circle in order to secure that training that we still need to do. We hope that would be a pretty easy thing to decide. The private meetings and board relationships, I don't I honestly don't know why I capitalize those things. Sorry. But basically, that's just a suggestion that we could move forward with planning some of those meetings where we could talk about values together privately and not have to have it be a public conversation, because we're allowed to do that. And then as far as hiring process goes, the vote to move forward with beginning a hiring process goes along with what Councillor Canal was saying about how facilitators could support us through this process of deciding, making governance decisions together. Independent counsel is, as I can't remember who said it earlier, but as is required for us to finalize bylaws, we're going to need someone to help us through the legal parts of that. And so we're definitely not asking to adopt this draft in any way. It's just a starting point, and we would need legal counsel in order to help us figure out the details for bylaws. In these bylaws are descriptions of ways of working that the PAC used. So this is a governance document that we thought we could start with and talk through together to say, do we want to do our governance in a similar way to how the PAC did? And so this, where it says like, vote to use PAC bylaws as a template, that is what we were hoping would be a conversation of, can we look at the PAC bylaws and say, is this a starting point that we want to start with, so we aren't starting from scratch and just a blank page in order to create our own bylaws. Similar with the democratic rules of order and the conversation around consensus. I'd really love to talk about the consensus process that the PAC used, and then democratic rules of order or Robert's rules, whatever we choose, could potentially help the in-between parts that consensus process doesn't cover. And so it's not really necessarily an either or, it's a what is our core process for making decisions, and then how do we govern our meetings in between the points where we're making those decisions together. Yeah, so I think it's absolutely, we need to decide in this meeting when we're meeting next, because currently our next meeting is not scheduled until a month from now. And so we need to make a decision this meeting if we're meeting every 2 weeks or not. So I would love for that to be a place for us to start, since it absolutely needs to happen this meeting.
Tim O'Donnell?
Well, again, thank you for kind of putting everything together, and I appreciate the comment about focusing today on governance systems, and I appreciate your comment that this does focus on governance systems, what you put together. Portions of it really do, and I read through the PAC portion that was pointed out to us by a community member. I assume it was somebody on the board that Kristen forwarded to us, and they highlighted specific pages of the 502 pages. Thankfully narrowed it down to about 30 to 40, and it really did focus on that governance system piece, and I do agree that that is a good place to start. These folks did this for a number of years, and they followed some rules that they did go through an entire process to create, and as a starting point of conversation, they did appear to be a great place to start. And I would have proposed something similar as a starting block. You all kind of went the full sprint, though, and kind of did the whole bylaws, and I appreciate that effort. But I agree that the PAC kind of governance rules and their consensus model is a great place to start, and I would encourage that for this evening and as a point of discussion to begin.
Atticus?
Hi, yes. So I went ahead and went back to the archive where we can actually go ahead and look through all the PAC's meetings, and I'm really glad that you guys put this together in a way that I was not able to I have a very low capacity, just for everybody's knowledge. So yeah, I really appreciate this. I think that it's important also that we can maybe, I don't know, have some community input for this decision that we're making about governance style. So I don't know exactly how to move forward with how we would start or letting people in the room talk.
Trish again?
Well, it's hard to, keep track of everything. I was trying to think of a way, how can we, organize the next step? And I'm not sure this is the best idea, but first, this also deals with meeting cadence. I'm kind of wondering whether we should meet in 2 weeks. The other is, I wonder if we could do vote a committee or get a committee together to collect community agreements, like using the I statements, kind of how we want to relate to each other, that we set up a committee that would present something to us. I know that 2 weeks might be too quick, but that might include inviting someone to come from, or people to come from other organizations. I don't know that 2 weeks is too slow or whatever, but it would seem to me that the community agreements and community input and all that is, with respect to that, is the first step. I guess I would have to make a motion, wouldn't I? Before I stop talking, there's one thing I think we should, and this is probably off topic, but we're not in, motion territory yet. I think we should make some sort of request of the city that, if possible, Kristen be given some support. I think she has been doing an absolutely amazing job. I wouldn't have wanted to do it. There are a lot of us, and, she's got all sorts of different, responsibilities and reporting and this and that. I don't know exactly who would be the person to ask, but, maybe Kristen would know who to ask. But, so I'm not going to make a motion quite yet because I want to make sure and talk about the Kristen thing, but I do think that we should try to set up a committee to deal with the agreements between us and have us meet in 2 weeks to discuss that, which would include if, people want to come in and testify and so on.
Okay, I've got the list of folks. I'm going to go to Corrine next because everybody else has spoken already, and then I'm going to go online, and then I'm going to look at people in the room. You've spoken on this already, too. So, yeah. So everybody at this point who's got their hand raised has already spoken. So I'm going to go to Corrine because she has not spoken on this topic. I'm going to turn to online, and then we'll hit the second round of folks because I've got that list ready. Thank you.
I would like to go along with what Trish said about subcommittees, because that's, I think, what we're talking about. And there's some timelines that we have to keep in mind that are actually city-bound. So by April 3rd, I believe we have to have some sort of look at our budget. So creating subcommittees as soon as possible is probably part of this immediate need. Community engagement, like Councilor Canal said, is really important in getting started on that. So creating those subcommittees, fiscal, probably community engagement, governance, just a scaffolding of what we need.
Okay, I'm looking at people who have not spoken yet in the room. Oh, I was talking about the word, but thank you so much. Appreciate that. Online folks, just give it a second in case anybody wants to come off mute. Okay, we're gonna go to the second round of comments. So Tita, Kyle, Justice, Madeline, and Dina.
I think as far as the governance style, I tried to bring it up several times just during our first couple of meetings, although that was certainly too early. I want to just bring up the democratic style again because it's a little loose, and I'm hoping we can maybe adopt it for a couple more meetings. And maybe it won't be the permanent style that we adopt, and it's just very similar to Robert's rules. Motions are created, they are seconded, they are discussed. You can essentially just modify language. You can table it for later. It gives us a lot of room to share ideas and not feel pressured to make immediate decisions, which is, I think, something that we're needing as a group as we're getting to know each other. And you can even vote on rewording, which I think is something we're already needing, which I enjoy about this group. I think it's going to be essential in the long term. And you can also create an agenda with the democratic style. So it might even help us get more organized just in the next few meetings. And I just also really want to say I would like to have a meeting every 2 weeks if we could also do that, just to continue to stay organized and continue to get to know each other and to continue working on bylaws. And also maybe have executive committees, the physical committees, and things of that nature. I think it's coming along.
Kyle?
Thank you for advocating for your favorite system. That's what I was going to recommend we start doing, which is that people who have strong opinions about a certain system sort of say their piece about why they like it, what they care about, why they think it would serve us well. Madeline and Dina, I mean, you put together this proposal. It came with a lot of paperwork. I would just love to hear from y'all, like what you liked about the system that you investigated, why you think it would work for us, how it would make our work more efficient. I'd just like to hear the passion people have. It allows me to get to know y'all better, and also it gives us like point of references to discuss as opposed to talking about how to talk.
Justice?
Sorry, before we get there, thank you for that suggestion. I just want to move to set a meeting for the 25th to begin at 6 a.m. and end at 8:30. And by 25th, I mean March 25th.
6 p.m. 6 p.m.
6 p.m., thank you. 6 p.m., end at 8:30 p.m. For March 25th of 2026.
I'll second you, Justice.
Is there any discussion, or can we go to a vote? Great. Tita?
Is there anything in particular that you guys want to discuss in the next meeting and the agenda?
Can I request that that be tabled till after this is decided? That'd be great. Kyle?
Yes.
Murtaza?
Yes.
Justice?
Yes.
Madeline?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Trish?
Yes.
Jillian?
Yes.
Ash?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Tita?
Yes.
Shelley?
Yes.
Jesse's not here, sorry. Tim?
Yes.
Tim Pitts?
Yes.
Tisha Pratt?
Yes.
Dina?
Yes.
Atticus?
Yes.
Okay, that was a unanimous vote. Thank you so much. I'll work to get the meeting set up for March 25th at 6 p.m. Just as an FYI, I will not be able to attend that meeting, so I will work to also get you some staff coverage and support. Going back to this list of people in line to discuss, Madeline, Dina, and then Pete.
Great. Oh gosh, so many things were covered that I wanted to respond to, but I'm gonna go straight and just talk about why, I'll speak for myself, why I really appreciate what the PAC did as far as their decision-making process. I think consensus is a great way to keep us from creating potential sort of factions. If we have things where, if we go for a straight Democratic vote where it's a simple majority, then it's possible for 9 of us, for 10 of us, to have strong disagreement with a decision moving forward. And that can really make it difficult for us to work together. I think consensus means that at least everyone's voice is heard. The way that the PAC did it was that basically you could vote to either you approve or you're neutral So neutral means I can live with this decision moving forward, or you disapprove, have strong disapproval. So if someone has strong disapproval, then we would talk through what those questions or concerns were. And I believe the way the PAC did it was that they talked through it at least 3 times, I think. And then if there was still disapproval, but the rest of the PAC felt that it was worth voting in order to move things forward, then a 60% vote could still make that thing approved. Does that make sense? But I think if we focus our efforts on bringing all of us along on decision making instead of trying to just get enough votes to move something forward that we want, even though we know there's a lot of disapproval among other people, then it's going to make it really hard for us to make decisions that we can all live with together, and we really need to be able to work together as we move forward. And then the democratic rules are basically Robert's rules simplified. So I just wanted us to be able to use, in between that consensus voting, to use some basic rules that we're basically already using for the most part. The downside of Robert's rules can be that A, it's really complex, and B, the folks who do really know how to use it can kind of use it to their own advantage by using it to kind of have like loopholes in order to move the things forward that they want to move forward. And the democratic rules make it less possible to do that because they don't have the complex rules that some people might have a really good grasp of and other people don't. Does that make sense?
Dina?
Yes.
And then I'm getting new hands on the list.
Awesome. So before I respond to Kyle and kind of go into why I agree with the things that we wrote in this proposed agenda, now more of something that can provide context instead of an agenda, I would like to make a quick motion just out of respect for the people in the room, and also at the end of the original agenda, that we need to vote to have public comment. And I know there are people in this room that want to give public comment and they don't know if they can. So I'd like to make a quick motion to have public comment at the end of this specific meeting.
Second.
We can have it, I'm trying to think if we should have it now or at the end, closer to the end of the meeting. I'm open to if people have an opinion on that.
So as the facilitator for this meeting, as voted on by you all, my recommendation is to wrap up the discussion, have a quick public comment section. Everybody go down the list in the room, online, and say which thing you're in favor for and why, based on the pre-work that you did or maybe did not do for this meeting. Have a vote, and then we move on to the next thing. And maybe that will give us some structure going forward. Does that sound fine to everybody?
Yeah.
I'm seeing head nods. Okay, so we're going to go back to this list real quick, and then we'll do the public comment vote. If you vote to have public comment, we'll go from there. So sorry, let me get my paper back again. Dina, did you have anything to add other than the public comment thing?
Oh yeah, I was gonna respond
please.
about what's in the this proposed agenda, but should I do that after the vote? I know that I've already made a motion, so usually we vote right after, so I'm not sure. Oh, should I withdraw it?
Yeah, it's up to you.
Okay, I mean, I'll withdraw it. Yeah, sounds
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So, so about what we wrote in here, I mean, I have met with a variety of stakeholders over the last 3 weeks. I've met with representatives from CRC, from the Mental Health Alliance. I have appointments with people from the Albina Ministry that we spoke about. Met with CopWatch. I've met with 5 different former members of the PAC, and every person that I've spoken to had nothing but good things to say about the PAC and the way that they ran, especially the people that I've spoken with who were on the PAC. Even though it was during COVID time and they were virtual, they still built bonds, they shared their values, and like Councillor Canal said, they very rarely had strong disagreements on their votes, and they were able to come to a consensus. And I think that is something that we're probably missing right now as the start of a board. And using this as a blueprint allows us to have that kind of notion of we're in this together and we're here for the community, because that's what the PAC talks about, instead of us just starting from scratch. And this taking, this could take like 3 or 4 meetings just for us to get to this specific point. But with this, we have a blueprint, and the PAC was created with us in mind. They created this board. So I am very passionate about at least using some of what they say, especially when it comes to public comment, consensus, building relationships across the board. Those are the most important things to me, even down to the phase plan and having specific like timelines, the rotating chairs. This just answers a lot of the concerns that we've already expressed. So starting with this gives us a place to bounce off of. And if we disagree with certain things, then we can change them. But that's kind of just my take.
Thank you. Pete?
To answer your question, I'm leaning more towards a modified democratic style myself, thinking that a supermajority rather than consensus. I'm okay with there not being consensus. I don't think we ever have to agree on everything all the time. I think it's great if we do. In my professional career, I've never managed by consensus. I've never been managed by consensus. It's been what is the best solution, what's the best answer of what we're trying to solve. So I'm leaning towards, like I said, modified democratic style. And I think if we could appease some people by having a supermajority rather than just a simple majority, I'm okay with that. What I wanted to say is, after the 2.5 meetings that we've had so far, I'm picking up on a few trends. I'm feeling a few things. And I think there's a certain level setting that we need to do. And what I mean by that is, yes, we need to know what our process is going to be. How are we going to move forward? How are we going to operate as a group? But when I look around the room and when I talk to people, there's a lot of people in the public and at this table who know a lot of things about a lot of things. But we don't know the same things about the same things. So I think it would benefit us a lot to bring in people like the PAC, have the public testimony, have people talk to us what has happened up to this point. I think that would help us all to talk about the code, to talk about the charter, to talk about the budget, for example. I think it is incumbent, if not necessary, for us to have subcommittees, because I don't see how there's any way that we're going to be able to get all the work done like this with 21 people trying to figure out everything all the time. But for the purposes of this meeting and the vote that we need to take, or the decisions that we make today, I'm definitely leaning towards that supermajority democratic style, because I think that's going to be the best blend of agility and speed and generalized agreement, and still allow for some debate.
Tim O'Donnell, Trish, and then Tim Pitts, and then potential motion.
Since Madeline and Dina provided something written that we all actually have and can look at, and I have actually the copy that they derived it from, or at least the pages we were directed to from the PAC's 502 pages. I think what we're really talking about today, or trying to talk about anyway without the tangents, is the kind of decision-making and governance process. So if you look at page 4 of what Madeline and Dina provided, section 5, and then section 6 on page 4, 5, and 6, it really outlines kind of in written format, using the same language the PAC document did, kind of what Pete just talked about as a democratic supermajority of 60%, what Dina and Madeline were talking about as the consensus model with the yays and nays votes. So it's only a couple of pages, really 2.5 pages read to get kind of everybody maybe on the same frame of context of what I think they're talking about, what we're all kind of talking about, sort of here and there, but like Pete said, from different places of knowledge of what we're thinking about here. So I would encourage everyone to kind of look at that section 6, section 5 on pages 4, 5, and 6, because I think that is a great place to start. And I agree with that. When I read the PAC document earlier this week, that's kind of where my head was at coming into this. And the reason for that is these folks did this for a number of years using that model, and by all at least accounts that I've heard, it worked. And they had the same number of board, essentially. I think they had 20, we have 21. And this model worked for them to get the business done that they did in all those phases that we're going to eventually talk about. So I would really encourage considering, and nowhere near a motion, but kind of, again, looking at that section 5 and 6 on pages 4, 5, and 6, and considering that as at least kind of like Councillor Cannell talked about, a starting point of a framework that we can then modify later. But Robert Rules of Order, great for today, but really I think what's on those pages and those sections would be a great framework just going forward until we tweak it.
Trish, and then Tim Pitts, please, and then.
Yeah, I totally concur with that. I suggested Robert's rules just so we wouldn't have kind of a free-for-all. And I'm totally in favor of, as long as we're not doing consensus, which means everybody has to agree, as long as we're not going in the other, see, to me, it's kind of like Robert's rules, consensus on one side and the other. And I think this is really a good way to go. And as Tim just discussed. So I'm tempted to make a motion saying that we should adopt the modified democratic process for the next 3 months of meetings, that at the next meeting, that a committee be formed to research, I can speak, I can, to research rules of the road, rules of our communicating with each other and deciding and so on, and to report that back at our next meeting. So modified democratic process, determine a committee to look into the community rules and to discuss those rules at the next meeting. And I guess I just made a motion.
Can I just pause for a second?
Yes.
It's totally okay, and we can do that. But prior to finishing this discussion, I would say we'll finish this discussion. Everybody will say
Great.
their preference.
Absolutely.
We'll take the potential public comment, so I'd like to not derail from that plan.
Absolutely.
Okay. Tim Pitts, please.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to briefly remind, just back to what Councillor Cannell talked to us about how the PAC, how we did our work, because it was really, really important that we were able to build consensus. We were able to work really, really well together. And there were people like, this feels right now like, oh, we don't know each other and we all have different viewpoints. Well, it was exactly the same with the PAC, and it was on Zoom, which I think made it a lot worse. But we were able to all really come together, and I really think a lot of it was that we were very values-based. We talked about our values at the beginning of every meeting. We had people like Charlie especially that would always bring us back to the values, which was very, very important to keep us grounded. And the way we ran our meetings was just really key, that it was not like rapid fire motions and then trying to get, I just need 11 votes right now type business. Like Councillor Cannell said, like it was rare that we really held an actual vote because we were able to bring ourselves around. And it wasn't like we spent hours and hours and hours. Like they were very efficiently run meetings, but it was also these outside facilitators that do this for a living that were amazing, that kept us on track. So I think it's very telling that Councillor Cannell, in the very beginning of his remarks tonight, he said that he will pay for us a facilitator out of his own budget for the next meeting if we will have one. So when a councillor is, I think, making an offer like that, you really have to think about why would they be making that offer? And I think that because he sees that we have a desperate need to get on the same page quicker, and I really think a facilitator would really do that, and just looking as much to how the PAC did things as possible in the beginning. So whichever way we go in 3 months of, the Democratic, that's fine. Like I could totally live with that. But aside from all that, I would definitely volunteer between now and the next meeting to go through the PAC final report and put together, and I'd be happy to collaborate with whoever else would like to lighten the workload, but to put together a draft outline that just shows the key differences between that final report and what City Council adopted as code, because Councillor Cannell was very kind. City Council shredded the PAC final report and put something else in its place. So there are some big differences, and I think we would all do really well to understand some of those differences sooner than later.
Okay, thank you. Dina, did you have something else to add?
Yes, I absolutely agree. Before I get to that, I think I got a little bit confused about withdrawing my motion. I just want to confirm, are we going to vote to have public comment anytime tonight?
Yes, that was the plan. So the plan was to wrap up the discussion, do a quick pass through of which style you're leaning towards for consensus, vote to have public comment, or make a motion for public comment, vote on that, have public comment, and then come back to the meeting to potentially discuss agenda topics, I think is what I said.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure, since the meeting does end at 8:30, I just want to make sure that we do make that time, but
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you. Ash, and then we'll go down the line go ahead, Ash, I'll say what I wrote down later.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm echo Tim's statement and not reinventing the wheel. I'm really excited to see what the PAC framework looks like, and even more excited for a facilitator. And so once we get our values all aligned and let that be our guiding, like our North Star, I think we'll really be on track. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Corinne, and then hopefully we can go down the line for...
Just want to make a comment about the fact that the historical context is really important, the work that the PAC did, but that we focus on what is in code, what is the law, and what we have to work with. So it's great to get context, but we need to stay focused on what we need to abide by.
Okay, I wrote down a list of people who said their preferences already, and so I'll just start down at Kyle, and we'll work our way down. If you will just state your preference and a quick why, so we can try to get to public meeting, that would be great. So Kyle?
Yeah, I have a strong preference for what was already done by the PAC, but I'd love to have more discussion about it, just because we just started talking about it organically, and I think it's something I'd love to get more group input on and figure out where people are at. So I don't say, yeah. The previous PAC work would be my preference.
Thank you. Tisha?
I hate this microphone. I am okay with using the PAC's framework. As far as the draft bylaws, I would need more time to sit with that, but I do appreciate the work that you put in to do that. But I think that's all I have, really.
Justice?
I echo the comments just made, except I would ask for one modification related to what is proposed here concerning the PAC's rules. Maybe this is something somebody can explain to me. It says, at minimum, a simple majority of the full CPPA must vote in affirmative for a decision to take effect, but our quorum only requires 11 for us to be able to meet. Is that correct? And
That is
so
quorum, yeah.
it doesn't make any sense why we'd be voting and having to have 11 if we have consensus of if there's a voting taking place, we should be able to vote if there's only 11 of us and 6 of us for it and 5 of us are against our 60%, whatever it is, 7 of us for it and 4 of us are against us. That would be my one modification, because that doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you. Tim, I think you...
Yeah, I'd support the consensus decision-making model that the PAC used.
Thank you. Shelley?
I also support the consensus-based model. I think.
Can you use the mic, please? Sorry.
Yes, sorry. I prefer the consensus model as well. I think that it allows us to bring a level of care to this work, care for each other as individuals, and care for the relationships that we're building while we're doing this work. I want to hear and respect the contributions of all parties, and I think that is the best way to get there. If it looks exactly like this in the beginning, that's fine. If we take the democratic model in the interim, that is also fine.
Ash?
I would vote for the consensus model. It seems the most accessible, straightforward, and a great place to start.
Jillian?
I'm also in support of the modified consensus model used by the PAC. I have not personally had issues with consensus building when all parties come to a discussion in good faith. Like, the expectation should be that nobody is blocking a vote. Like, if you're a single person that is really against something, you know, we try to bring everybody along, and as long as there's not strong opposition, that people are not blocking decisions from being made. So, check.
Trish, I kind of captured your vote, but
If I could just make one quick comment.
Please.
I'm in line with what people are talking about, although is there a difference between consensus and modified democratic? But, I think the modified democratic is the way to go. I think it's easier said than done that everybody's going to be, totally agreed. I also think a really important thing is when we're making policy decisions, I'm comfortable with it, frankly, with either model. When we're making decisions about officer misconduct, I think a consensus model, we really need to think very carefully about how we want to make decisions as a group on those matters. I'm not saying which model we should use, but I think we need to consider that separately.
Tim, I kind of got yours, but if you wanted to add anything
And just
quickly.
for what Trish is saying, I think that is a separate issue. That's when you're a board hearing cases and the panels on an individual matter. I think that's an entirely different process. We're talking today about as a full board how we meet and discuss and make decisions. And to be even more specific on what I mean by adopt consensus decision-making model, whether it be the PAC itself's direct document or the one that Madeline and Dina created, they're essentially the mirror images. I would be proposed in favor of section 5 and 6. Really, again, it's kind of the same in each of those documents as being the framework we start with and adopt today. It's very general. It talks just about what is the consensus model. It talks about the 60%. I did like Justice's proposal of kind of modifying that 60% to be based on what the quorum is that day, not necessarily 11. So again, in summary, I would say we adopt today sections 5 and 6 of either the PAC final report or what Dina and Madeline proposed, because again, they're basically the same thing.
Green?
Exactly like Tim, basically, Tim O'Donnell, and also mirroring justice concern. And I guess it's not in regards to quorum, but actual membership attendance, because that will be varying. So 60% of that actual membership attendance.
Dina, Madeline, and Pete, I've recorded your favors, so I'm going to jump to Sarah. Sure.
So as I mentioned earlier, anything that's in italics is from code, and I agree, Justice, that doesn't make sense to me either, that at minimum, a simple majority of the CBPA has to vote affirmative for a decision to take effect. So that's something that we would want to talk to an independent counsel about to get a better understanding of why that's in code and what exactly it means for us. Is it not in italic? No, it is. It's under board business voting, which is
5B3.
Yeah, 5B3. That's in italics. Just to clarify.
Sarah?
I agree with what Pete had said with a modified democratic style with a supermajority, except I think the supermajority should be 2/3 rather than 60%. That's my idea. And I have some other suggestions as well that I would add once we kind of start, because I had come up with some ideas for modified kind of hybrid set of rules and stuff, but we can get to that once we decide on an initial framework.
Tita, you had shared yours already, so I'm going to jump to Atticus.
Yeah, I think the following what the PAC laid out is a very good idea, and let me find where I noted between, and then yeah, we can always restructure in the future if, as things change. So I think that's a great place to start.
Okay, now, and Murtaza, please, if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, I just want to echo what a lot of the board members have already said. I think working off what's already been established by the by the PAC, given its proven track record and its collaborative, cooperative framework. I think that would be my preference as well.
Thank you for your patience too. Appreciate it. In an effort to save time, I'm going to ask just for nods of heads for public comment to take place. Thank you. Okay, we're going to do a quick 10 minutes, which will probably be about a minute and a half each. So if you wouldn't mind, first come up to the microphone, line up behind. I'm going to get a timer going. We all know how bad that went last time I did a timer. But we're going to do it. So whoever wants to get in line first would be great while I get this set up. Okay, and please state your name for the record. Your minute and a half starts now.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Harrison Courtenay,
Oh.
and I am from Portland. I moved here in '97.
Can you please turn your mic on? I'm sorry.
My mic.
Yeah, hit the
That
little
one?
button. Yes.
Oh,
thank
now
you.
it's green. There we go. Restart timer. Sweet.
Yeah, you betcha.
Could you say your name again? I'm
So
sorry.
I moved to Portland in 1997 from Enterprise, Alabama. I was born in El Paso, Texas. Andrew Harrison Courtenay. My father's Peter Harrison Courtenay. My grandfather is Sir Walter Harrison Courtenay on my dad's side. I don't know what's going on. It's absolutely ridiculous that I haven't had a say in anything and that I've been kind of running around with my head cut off for a while now, running through these loops and nobody able to help or nobody wanting to help as this system that's being set up is being put into place without my input, and it's absolutely ridiculous. I've had a lot of trauma as a child, a lot of trauma here in Portland, but I know Portland very well. I came from Deer Park, Washington in the beginning of November. If it's 2025 as time exists, right, then we need to have input of people that are out of the loop and people that aren't able to find a meeting like this, as I've had to look all around the city, from City Hall right across the street over here to the federal building, and I've been kicked out of every single place I went. Got kicked out of Kaiser Hospital, got kicked out of Hooper Detox, got kicked out of Central City Concerns buildings, and I'm going to take 30 more seconds here. And with the amount of stress that I've went through, a minute and a half doesn't do it justice. But I think everybody in here knows, right? Because you guys have computers and you guys are able to see more than I am, as I've done this all with just the brain I have up here and putting this pieces of this puzzle together. And I finally found the missing piece, and that missing piece is me. And we need to have a rediscussion of whatever system is being installed right now. I appreciate your time. Thank you for bearing with me as I talked a little bit fast, and I hope that this testimony I give and my presence here tonight is going to do something, actually do something for the city and for the freaking world.
I appreciate your comments. If you want to talk with me after the meeting, I'd be happy to give you an email address to follow up. So thank you. Next, please. And Debbie, once you sit down, I'll get the timer going again. And I do apologize for the short time. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Debbie Iona. I was a former member of the PAC, and so I wanted to give you some feedback on the consensus model. When I first joined the PAC, I felt quite neutral about what decision-making model we chose, but we chose consensus, and it just was so great to see how, I think some of you articulated, how it affected the way we worked with each other. By the end, you know, we were making a big decision about a big code package, and we were unanimous in our recommendation. And we were just so bonded by the end. We'd all worked together in a positive way with each other. And again, you know, this was all virtual. We didn't see each other in person, really. So, I'm glad it seems like you're leaning in that direction. The co-chairs, that was another thing I was sort of like, you know, one way or the other, it didn't matter to me. But we had the 3 co-chairs for the big group and 2 for all the little subcommittees. And that was also great. I loved having when it was my turn to be a co-chair, it was so nice to have a sidekick, or two. And with the full chairs, if there were three of you, I mean, the chairs for the full committee, if one couldn't make it, then there were still two of you left. So it just had so many positives. When I was looking through our report to send you guys that sort of handout I made, I noticed that our bylaws committee, which I was on, we met 6 times. It takes a while to do this. And so, I think you shouldn't feel badly that it's taking a while. I want just 2 more quick little things. Councillor Canal mentioned training for you guys, and when I looked at the transition plan, it reminded me that it recommends that you ask people from the Police Review Board and the Citizen Review Committee to coach you on when you're going to be dealing with the actual officer issues. And then my last thing is, tonight there's also a PCCEP meeting, and I hope you guys, once you kind of get your grounded, to start thinking about how to organize your meetings so that they're always not on the same night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I created a testimony without knowing what time, so I'm going to talk really fast.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know the time either, and I didn't know we were going to have public comment until just a little bit ago, but
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
So,
Go ahead, Charlie.
I passed out, don't start my timer yet. I passed out that email that Debbie was just talking about with some sections of the report that we came up with when we were on the PAC. So anyway, that might benefit all of you. She emailed you as well. And then the other part is, because I know how important values are, I sent you copies of the PAC values that we came up with and the core city values. Okay. So I'm Charlie Michelle Wesley, and I'm a tribal member of the multiple Northwest tribes of this, our land, now called Oregon. I helped to get Measure 26217 passed, and I was chosen to be on the Police Accountability Commission and then on the Community Board for Police Accountability, briefly. Following voter approval of the city's new oversight system, the Department of Justice and City agreed to update the settlement agreement to include the Community Board for Police Accountability and the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability as tools for strengthening accountability with primary focus on community concerns. I cannot stress the importance of that enough because we seem to be talking about a lot of things, but not community. This is for community. On several OCPA and CBPA City of Portland sites, there is only a summary of the mission statement, which states, the Community Board for Police Accountability and the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability is to independently investigate sworn employees and supervisors there within the Portland Police Bureau. And what it leaves out in that summary, because it's on several sites, it leaves out the significance of community voices that is later briefly mentioned, and I quote, make recommendations regarding police practices, policies, and directives to Portland Police Bureau with a primary focus on community concerns. We must remember this in every decision to keep in mind this is a life and death for those community members. Someone has to protect them, but the focus seems to be on the city's protection that undermines accountability versus uplifting community voices. As per the city's OCPA website, under the events section, and in regards to public meetings for the CBPA data today, it states, in accordance with Portland City Code, state law, CBPA conducts hybrid public meetings, allowing board members to participate fully, either in person or online. Now, that's board members, via video and teleconference. However, it states members of the public are welcome to attend in person, while online participation is limited to ensure a safe and constructive environment. Yeah. This is one of the only public meetings that put that barrier in place, which suppresses public testimony, allow me to define suppress, to forcibly put an end to protest, expression of information, hold back emotions and reaction, conceal evidence, and to deny extensive lived experience. This is oppressive and inequitable, as well as shutting out those who, for one reason or another, can't get here in person. This goes against core city values, which states the city of Portland condemns oppression and inequality. Also, the core city values of communication states shift the power dynamic that holds space for the voices and contributions of BIPOC, those with disabilities, etc. So this barrier goes against, I'm also certain, ADA laws, protected groups, and many other core city values. Although I am still recovering from a series of medical issues, and I really shouldn't be out tonight, I'm here in person, so my voice will hopefully matter. But the city doesn't reflect that. Maybe on the grounds that those of us with lived experience are too emotional, or my lived experience brings too much truth. Either way, the powers that be simply don't want to have to acknowledge or think about the truth. My emotional experience brings CBP a hard-earned wisdom. I can be highly emotional and rational at the same time, and does not validate my contribution to the CBPA. The CBPA nor does it lack evidence. In fact, my intensity is in itself evidence, which is heard in the tone of my voice with online testimony. But this barrier of not allowing public comment online actually works works the opposite of the stated reason of safety. It actually oppressively harms us, and it denies valuable input, and is put in place by those who do not know or want to hear the suffering and realities that can influence real accountability, and instead dismisses us from the conversation. Those of us who've had extensive lived experience with police, excessive and deadly force. We demand public testimony online. It is our right to be heard in standing with and rooted in the core city values. Those should be held up, and you should make every decision through the lens of those values, and even make them better. Otherwise, you don't have nor cherish these values as we do. Don't allow the core city values to be another insensitive performative act, please. And I've passed around copies for you. Yeah, so thank you. And I wish I could be out there with you guys.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay. Gonna start the timer again. Go ahead, please.
Hi, my name's Rochelle Silver. I'm a retired psychologist and a member of the Mental Health Alliance that was mentioned earlier today. I wanted to mention just a couple of things. One, whatever group you put together, subcommittee or whatever, to work on things like bylaws, the PAC is certainly a good model, but it's not the only model. And there are other models available to you. The PSEP has bylaws, the CRC has bylaws, the COAB had bylaws, and those are easy to obtain, as well as maybe other oversight committees that exist for the police right now. So, you know, collect a couple, 3 things and look at them. Just, you know, the PAC is great, and maybe that's what you're going to settle with, but that's not the only thing available. The other and more important thing that I wanted to talk about, at your very first meeting, a community member recommended that you consider getting independent counsel. It was not mentioned at your second meeting when you talked about the hiring process of your director. It was, the words independent counsel were mentioned a couple times today by Council Canal and one other person. So I would like to recommend again that you consider independent counsel, and actually I'd like to elevate my recommendation. I think it's imperative that you get independent counsel. I would say this if the city council people were here also. And it's nothing against them, but their client is the city. Their client is the Portland Police Bureau and the police officers. Their client is not the community. Their client is not the people. And that's what we're here for, I believe. And so the sooner you can get independent counsel, there are several people you can talk to about it. The PAC had independent counsel. The auditor has independent counsel. There's a couple other departments in the city that do. Please do that as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sam Bowman. I'm here with KBOO Community Radio. Since I'm media, I'll keep it brief, but also, this may have happened at the beginning. I missed the first couple minutes, so hopefully I'm not making a fool of myself. But if it's possible to start every meeting with like a roll call that is coherent for the people online especially, and also if it's possible to like widen the camera frame so that when people are talking, it's possible to see the name tags as well. I attended virtually last week, and it took a couple rounds of voting to like track who everybody is, and still wasn't quite possible. 21 is less than 33, but it's still a lot of people. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joanne Hardesty, and I want to agree with Sunny about how surprised I was when I looked online that it said you limited people online. As an elderly person out in this weather, I just found it kind of appalling that you expect the public to come downtown in order to have their voice on the record, and I hope you'll correct that, because that's not acceptable at all. I wanted to keep reminding you that you are an independent police oversight board. You have come into existence because the IPR, which was called the Independent Police Review, wasn't really independent, didn't really review the police, and the community had lost all confidence that they had the ability to hold police accountable for their behavior. That is why over 80% of voters voted for a brand new system. I highly encourage you to get your own legal representation as well as your own facilitation, because again, we're not recreating city bodies. We're creating something the city of Portland has never had before, a truly community-driven oversight body that is here to represent people who do not have a voice inside City Hall. People who their complaints were not investigated, people who had complaints where they were ignored because they were homeless or because they were poor or because they were people that did not have legal representation. As someone who was set up personally by the police for false prosecution, I can tell you it is not easy to come into a city building. There's really no reason why you're using a government building. You should be all over the community. Why are you not in East Portland? Why are you not in North Portland? Why are you not going where the people live who have experienced police violence in this community? I will continue to come back to remind you that the city is not your boss. It is those people without a voice that are dependent on you to build a system that they will trust, that they will respect, that they will believe when they come and file a complaint. Real live people are going to take it seriously and do their due diligence and make sure that their voice is respected in this process. So, it drove me crazy sitting there for 20 minutes while you guys tried to figure out how you were going to talk to each other tonight. And then you wanted to limit us to 1 minute and 30 seconds. That is not respectful of the people who hired you to do the most important job that there is for free. I know you're not getting paid for free, but the most important job that the citizens in this community have given you. Please don't take that for granted. It is vital that you get it right. We don't want what we already had because it took us 15 years to get rid of it. We want better, and we want you to be the people that put better in place. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, everybody in the virtual space as well. We got to acknowledge them. Simab Husseini, former Police Accountability Commissioner and current Portland Cop Watch member. Just a few pearls that may push your time limit. We need more time. We were dying for public feedback, and if you look at our videos, we hardly had it, and we're like, damn, what are we doing wrong? Are we like not, should we have some background music or something, you know? I don't know. But I was dying for feedback. All of us were. So make time, and when they show up like this, we didn't have this. This is great. I'm so glad to be here. Anyway, reclaim my time. So know your history, how you got here. So important. Not to say that you guys don't, but just have to say it. The AMAC, Mental Health Alliance, League of Women Voters, US DOJ settlement, upcoming hearings with Judge Simon. Who is this Judge Simon? Yes, like, know these things. You and your office put together a report to Deputy City Administrator, Sarah Morrissey. You guys report to, but aren't accountable. You guys are the accountable entity to the community. You and your office put together is the accountability system. It's amazing to know that. Like Joanne said, nobody in the country did that. Consensus could be found in any model. Intentions shine through tools. So in plain terms for us, the model was to try hard, get broad agreement first, allow dissent without requiring unanimity. God, I hate that word. And use a supermajority fallback when consensus fails. Hardly ever used it. I don't even know if we did. I think when it came to that point, we found consensus. Honor each other's differences. Honor it, table it, and those that are being tabled. I've been tabled so many times, and and some of my ideas didn't work, and I was bitter, but I knew that it was for the better. Ultimately, if I'm able to build trust with those that kind of push back against me, and I can trust that we're having dialogue with each other, you know, I'll eat my humble pie. It started tasting good sometimes. But I have a lot more to say. What I do want also to ask Kristen and let you guys know, access to like being able to broadcast some emails to you guys as community would be great as well.
There is a, There is a email, cbpainfo@portlandoregon.gov.
Feel
It's
bad
on
that
the
I didn't know that.
website now, so you can email the entire board at once that
Right.
way.
And Trish, I heard you earlier when you were talking about like, you know, how stretched she should be. She shouldn't be stretched. Kristen works for you guys, straight up, right?
Yep.
So her stretches with anything you guys are asking her to do. So Kristen shouldn't be doing anything else except CBPA. You need to take advantage of her abilities to be able to help set your phase plan similar to the way Samir presented ours. That phase plan was so important, it made it easier. You felt like you were skating forward for a reason. Justice, I hear you asking for that structure and for us to be able to move things along. Absolutely. Trust this guy, this voice, allow him to push on the time. That way you guys understand, okay, we may need to table this if we're not coming to a discussion, or we need to come to it quick. But it's so important, everybody over here. Sarah pushing back earlier as well. Like just being able to hear the dissenting, the arguments, the voices, and make sure that, you know, you guys can make these corrections. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes public comment. Appreciate everybody that's spoke this evening. Prior to the public comment, we had talked about potentially voting on a method going forward, and so I'm looking to see if there's a motion. Dina's hand, and then I saw Tim's hand, but
Yeah. First of all, I want to apologize. I don't feel good about public comment being a minute and a half. That is unacceptable. We should absolutely be making time for public comment to be 3 minutes at the end of every meeting, as well as being available online. I apologize for the inaccessibility. It's appalling, and I'm very sorry about that. And we will work in the next meeting to talk about that. But I will make a motion to specifically follow the sections 4 and 5, I believe it was, that we talked about, 5 and 6 in this document, or We can also use the PAC language, but I'm pretty sure it is very similar, so I'm going to make that motion.
Second. Sorry, I missed who the second was. Trish, thank you. Yep.
Are we voting to accept as is, or are we voting to use it as a template that we can modify as we move forward?
I think as a template, and then in the next meeting, we can discuss if there's any changes that we want to make. But we can, at least for the next meeting, have that to start with.
Pete, and then I think it was Shelley. Oh, no. Okay, Pete.
I think we're talking about two different things. One thing is a template as bylaws, and the other thing is what is our decision-making process. So my understanding is that the question and what we're voting on is what is our decision-making process.
I think the motion is to use section 5 and 6, which I understand to be a decision-making model process, for the next meeting. I see you, but
Yeah, no, I get that.
which I think is the is it modified democratic with consensus building? Is that correct?
Well, then I just want to make sure that we are as specific as possible. So if the motion is decision-making, section 5 up to 5F, for example, I just don't want it to be ambiguous about where that actually stops.
I think the motion was sections 5 and 6, so it's to include both. And I think the motion also was for this to be just at the next meeting, not to be for further meetings.
Okay, as long as we're,
right,
just want to make sure
Justice?
we're all talking about the same thing.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Just quickly, I think it's important we need to have these things circulated beforehand. There's issues that I see in this that I don't think we've necessarily thought through. And I'll just make it quick. Number one, it requires in the section 5A, section 2, that subcommittees will have a determined number of members. I'm unsure what that phrase actually means. I know it's from the statute, but it's not entirely clear. The bigger issue that I have is that, and I know this is a separate issue, but is it incorporating our review panels in here and stating that our review panels will be a consensus if you read the rules themselves? And so that's a concern for me as well, because that's not what we agreed upon, and that should be struck out of this. And so I guess the other portion of it is not all of this relates to, and 6 relates to the decision-making process. C is actually the decision-making process. The others is disclosure of conflicts of interest, use of technology to facilitate remote meetings, and then the other part, which I understand, I think this part would go, which would be A, creating respectful and inclusive place. I'm fine with the public participation portion of it related to it, but if there's a way to modify it to actually reflect what we want, I think that would be important.
Madeline?
Can we vote for this as a starting point for our next meeting, and then in the next meeting we can decide if there are subsections that we want to table and not discuss at the next meeting? Does that make sense? But just as a starting point, sections 5 and 6, we'll agree to discuss those at the next meeting and have them as a starting point. And as you were saying, Justice, there are things that we would want to modify about them and discuss changes.
To be clear, it's totally up to the board. I was just putting that out there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
4
This is
minutes.
Heidi.
So Tita, Heidi, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
We cannot hear you.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm trying to stay quiet as much as I can. I apologize. I haven't been able to look at what you're looking at.
Heidi?
But what I just heard. Yes.
It's really hard to hear you.
Oh, okay. I will. Is this any better?
That's way better. Thank you.
Okay, I'm leaning way in and talking loud. I will keep doing that. Please let me know if I fade out. I just heard Justice talking about one area saying that the panel review boards would have a consensus, and I'm not sure if you mean majority or not, but I just want you to all know that if you're voting on that tonight, city code has something in it about how reviewing members will be a non-final majority agreement on one area, and then majority reviewing members when you come out to make a decision, to vote on a decision. So I just want to be sure that whatever you're doing complies with city code as well. So if you're doing something that impacts votes, and you could let me review it and get back to you on that piece of it, I would greatly appreciate it. I can also do a really fast check on, I mean, if you're just talking about voting on how to govern yourself and not on how to make decisions, then I think that will be okay. So I apologize that I don't have the document and am not able to do a comparison right now.
Madeline?
Heidi, are you able to be at the next meeting and advise us as we move through the document? We would provide you with it before we start talking.
Your next meeting, you said, was going to be on April?
On the 25th of March.
Sorry, 25th
of March.
5th, that's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm that. So sometimes it was hard to hear a few things. Yes, I am happy to be there on March 25th. And I'm also happy to bring some information about independent legal counsel for whatever point in time you all want to consider that. I think it's a great idea, and I'd love to move forward with that with all of you to get your own legal counsel as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2 minutes, Jillian.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we vote on this, and I don't know if this is also something that needs to be voted on, but I heard a really strong preference for us to make sure that public comment happens online as well as in person. So if we also need to vote on that, I would just like to make that happen as well.
That has been in the works and in my staff report, and it's been something I've been actively working on consistently, and it just hasn't been, there's some technical things that are being worked on, so updates will continue to be in the staff report about providing public comment online.
Okay, so it's not something that needs to be voted on?
No.
Okay, great.
It's actively being worked on. Yeah, Tim.
My apologies for getting off track, but I wanted to bring this up because that's one of the most important things that I heard. I think that we have to have a way to have online comment. I know from your emails that you've been working on it and that you've been trying to get us access to the platform that City Council uses for their meetings because that allows public comment. So I would just love to plead that if we do not have that set up at the next meeting, if we could have the top agenda item be a discussion of why that's not set up and what we can do to help you to escalate it so that we could at least understand the issues. Because I know you're working on it, but we really got to have that in place.
And I should have more information after my meeting next week too, so. It is meeting time. Can we please call the vote? Or, okay. Kyle, are you voting?
No, I'd want a table discussion for next time about a community bridge that specifically around a committee that would investigate the difference between the PAC final report and the entity that we are now. The underlying tension I've heard from feedback from community members is the differences between the two, and I think it would be prudent for us to figure out for a committee to investigate that thoroughly, because it won't be something we can do as a full board while we're also hiring and going through that full process. Thanks.
Okay, there is a motion right now to adopt sections 5 and 6 in the document as a template for next meeting. Justice?
I'm sorry, I got to jump in.
Please.
I believe we should table this until the next meeting. I don't want to be violating the city charter by making a vote related to these issues.
I'm seeing head nods.
I second that.
Is there a withdrawal of the motion?
Yeah, I agree. I'll withdraw it.
Thank you.
But I do think we should recommend that Kristen receive assistance, whomever she needs to contact. Can't hear you.
Can you use the mic, please? Sorry.
I just wanted to repeat, and maybe we can, do a thumbs up or nod, that Kristen ask whomever is appropriate, that she be given additional staffing assistance.
I second.
Okay.
Can we just
table that
raise,
as
can we
well?
just see if it's unanimous?
Can we please table that as well, because of the time? What I would like to
Okay.
ask for instead is maybe, and I'm looking to the board, and if you think this is a bad idea, we won't do it, but I'm looking to have 3 people volunteer to meet with me to agenda set for the meeting on the 25th. Can we do thumbs up quick? I've got some side thumbs up, I got some, okay.
I'm sorry, I just have to jump in. Samir Kanal offered for our next meeting to pay for a facilitator for us. So that is just something that I, if an agenda is getting made, Samir offered for us to have that for our next meeting, so.
Yep.
That doesn't, I don't know how that works, having somebody pay for.
Yeah, and I had brought facilitator options to you guys at the first meeting as well that we could pay for. So I think that could be part of the conversation with agenda setting, but can I have 3 volunteers who will work with me? So I saw Tim Pitt's hand, I saw Dina's hand, I saw Madeline's hand. So is everybody okay with those 3? Can I get thumbs up, please? Thank you so much. Okay, I'll reach out to the 3 of you to coordinate an agenda setting meeting. I appreciate everybody's time. This meeting is adjourned.
Mm-hmm.